When there seems no way, when the mind has traced every familiar path and found only walls, when the heart feels weary from carrying questions that have no immediate answers, something quietly sacred is taking place beneath the surface of your awareness. Life has not abandoned you in these moments. It has invited you into a deeper conversation. This is not a punishment nor a cosmic oversight. It is a pause designed with intelligence, a stillness shaped by wisdom, far greater than the restless calculations of the ego. The soul understands what the mind cannot yet see, and it waits patiently for you to soften your grip on fear so it can guide you home. There are seasons in every human life when effort alone no longer works. You push, you plan, you try harder, and still nothing opens. The ego interprets this as failure, as evidence that you are not enough or that you have missed something essential. But the soul reads it differently. The soul knows that exhaustion is often the doorway through which surrender enters. When striving collapses, space appears. And in that space, a higher order can finally be felt. What you call being stuck is often the moment when life is asking you to stop living from force and begin living from trust. You were not designed to carry the burden of figuring everything out. The mind is a brilliant servant, but it was never meant to be the master of your existence. It deals in fragments, in past memories and future projections. And when it cannot assemble a clear picture, it panics. Yet beneath this anxious activity is a quieter intelligence, one that does not shout, does not argue, and does not demand proof. This intelligence is the same force that causes a seed to split open underground long before the sun ever touches it. The seed does not ask how it will become a tree. It does not worry about storms or seasons. It trusts the design encoded within it. So do you, whether you remember it or not. When there seems no way, it is often because you are looking through the narrow lens of fear. Fear convinces you that control is safety and that certainty is security. It urges you to grip tighter, to force outcomes, to demand answers before you are ready to receive them. But fear cannot create clarity. It only amplifies confusion. Faith, on the other hand, does not require you to see the entire path. It asks only that you take the next honest step, guided not by panic but by presence. Faith is not blind belief. It is alignment with a truth that exists beyond appearances. There is a quiet miracle that occurs the moment you stop asking, "How will this work?" and begin asking, "What is this teaching me?" The energy shifts, resistance dissolves. The mind relaxes its interrogation, and the heart opens to guidance. Life responds instantly to this inner realignment. Doors that could not be forced open suddenly swing with ease. Conversations happen at the right moment. Ideas arise without strain. Support appears from unexpected directions. None of this is accidental. It is the natural response of the universe to a consciousness that has moved from fear into trust. You are not here to battle life. You are here to cooperate with it. Every challenge that feels impossible is inviting you to release an outdated identity. The ego clings to who you were, to old roles, old wounds, old narratives about limitation. It resists change because it believes familiarity is survival. But the soul knows that growth requires letting go. When life removes what once worked, it is not punishing you. It is preparing you for a truer expression of yourself. What feels like loss is often liberation in disguise. There is a profound freedom that emerges when you accept that you are not the source of the river, only the vessel through which it flows. Your job is not to manufacture outcomes, but to remain open, aligned, and receptive. Stillness is not inactivity. It is intelligent listening. When you quiet the constant mental noise, you begin to sense subtle nudges, gentle impulses that guide you without force. These are not dramatic commands. They are whispers of intuition, always calm, always loving, always precise. The heart becomes tired not from effort, but from resistance. It grows heavy when you insist that life unfold according to your timetable, your preferences, your fears. The moment you release this insistence, something softens inside you. You breathe differently. You listen differently. And in that softened state, healing begins, not because circumstances have changed, but because you have. Inner freedom is not the absence of challenge. It is the absence of inner conflict with what is. There are no justified resentments on this path. Every grievance binds you to the past, keeping your energy locked in stories that can no longer serve your becoming. Forgiveness is not about condoning harm. It is about reclaiming your life force. When you release resentment, you free yourself from the need for the past to have been different. You step into the present, where all transformation occurs. The present moment is not a waiting room. It is the point of power from which all creation flows. You are not your ego, and you never were. The ego is a collection of thoughts, roles, and defenses assembled over time. It is not evil, it is simply limited. It believes you are separate, vulnerable, and incomplete. The soul knows otherwise. It knows you are already enough, already whole, already connected to the same intelligence that turns chaos into order and silence into song. When you identify with this deeper truth, fear loses its authority. It may still appear, but it no longer dictates your choices. Healing does not arrive from outside of you. It begins the moment you stop arguing with reality and start aligning with your inner truth. The body relaxes when the mind releases its constant vigilance. The heart opens when judgment dissolves. Energy flows where acceptance lives. This is not passive resignation. It is conscious cooperation. You meet life where it is, not where you think it should be, and in doing so, you allow it to lift you. There is a divine timing at work that cannot be rushed or reasoned with. When something is not happening, it is often because you are being prepared to receive it without fear. The delay is not denial, it is refinement. You are being reshaped from the inside so that what arrives will not overwhelm you but expand you. Trust this process. Trust that nothing meant for you can miss you, and nothing that misses you was ever meant to stay. Living in the now is not a spiritual concept. It is a practical necessity for peace. The present moment is the only place where guidance can be felt and acted upon. The past exists as memory, the future as imagination, but life unfolds only now. When you bring your full attention into this moment, anxiety dissolves, clarity sharpens, and gratitude naturally arises. Gratitude is not dependent on circumstances. It is a state of alignment. It acknowledges that even in uncertainty, life is supporting you. When there seems no way, remember that ways are revealed, not forced. They emerge through alignment, not anxiety. The universe responds not to your desperation, but to your trust. It mirrors your inner state with remarkable precision. When you are frantic, life feels chaotic. When you are centered, life feels cooperative. This is not coincidence. It is law. Change your thoughts, change your life is not a slogan. It is a description of how reality responds to consciousness. You are a divine being having a human experience, not a human struggling toward divinity. This reversal of perspective changes everything. It reminds you that support is your natural state, not something you must earn. You are guided not because you are special, but because guidance is inherent in life itself. When you align with purpose, faith, and inner stillness, you move with the current instead of against it. There will be moments when the old fears resurface, when the mind demands proof and the heart remembers past disappointments. When this happens, do not judge yourself. Simply return to stillness, breathe, listen. Ask not how, but why. Why is this moment here? What is it inviting you to release? What deeper strength is it calling forth? In these questions, the way begins to reveal itself. Life does not close doors to punish you. It closes them to redirect you. What feels like an ending is often a beginning that cannot yet be seen. Trust the unseen. Trust the intelligence that has carried you through every challenge so far. You are not lost. You are being led. And when you finally look back, you will see that the moments when there seemed no way were the very moments that shaped your greatest awakening, your deepest healing, and your truest freedom. And so the journey continues inward, not as an escape from life, but as a return to its deepest intelligence. There is a subtle recalibration happening now, one that does not announce itself with noise or urgency. It feels more like a quiet remembering, as if something ancient within you is gently rising to the surface after years of being overlooked. This remembering does not demand effort. It asks only for your willingness to stop running from the silence and to discover that the silence itself is alive, responsive, and kind. Within this stillness, you may notice that the questions that once felt so heavy begin to lose their sharp edges. They no longer need immediate answers. They soften into curiosities rather than demands. The soul does not operate on deadlines. It moves in rhythms, in cycles that honor growth rather than speed. When you align with this rhythm, impatience dissolves, and you realize that nothing has been wasted. Every delay has been shaping your capacity to receive wisdom without fear. There is a sacred intelligence woven into every seeming detour of your life. Even the paths that appeared misguided were quietly teaching you discernment. Even the moments of confusion were refining your sensitivity to truth. Nothing was random, nothing was meaningless. You were learning how to listen beyond appearances, how to sense guidance that does not arrive as instructions but as inner resonance. When something feels aligned, it carries a calm certainty. When it does not, the body tightens, the breath shortens. This is the language of intuition, and it has been speaking to you all along. As you learn to trust this inner compass, you may feel an unfamiliar lightness. This is not because problems have vanished, but because you are no longer carrying them alone. There is a difference between responsibility and burden. Responsibility is conscious participation. Burden is unconscious resistance. When you release the belief that everything depends on you, you open yourself to cooperation with a force that has always been available. Life becomes a dialogue rather than a struggle. You begin to notice that clarity often arrives after acceptance, not before it. The mind wants certainty as a prerequisite for peace, but the heart knows peace is the doorway through which clarity enters. When you allow yourself to be exactly where you are, without judgment or urgency, insight arises naturally. It feels less like thinking and more like remembering. The solution does not shout, it settles. It fits. It carries a quiet rightness that does not require validation. There is also a gentle undoing happening now, a loosening of identities that no longer fit the truth of who you are becoming. You may feel less compelled to explain yourself, to defend your choices, or to seek approval. This is not withdrawal, it is integration. You are learning to live from an inner reference point rather than an external one. When your sense of worth no longer depends on outcomes, success and failure lose their power to define you. In this space, compassion deepens, not just for others, but for yourself. You begin to see your past not as a series of mistakes, but as a curriculum designed to awaken empathy and humility. You recognize that you did the best you could with the awareness you had at the time. This recognition heals more than any self-criticism ever could. Self-kindness is not indulgence. It is alignment with truth. Harshness contracts the spirit, but gentleness allows it to expand. As this expansion unfolds, your relationship with uncertainty transforms. What once felt threatening now feels open, even promising. You understand that uncertainty is not emptiness, it is possibility. It is the fertile ground from which new insights emerge. When you stop insisting on predictability, life reveals its creative intelligence. You become less concerned with controlling the future and more attuned to participating fully in the present. There is a quiet courage growing within you now, one that does not rely on force or bravado. It is the courage to remain open when answers are incomplete, to remain loving when outcomes are unknown. This courage is born of trust, not certainty. It is the strength of someone who knows that their value is intrinsic, not conditional. From this place, action becomes cleaner, more precise, less reactive. You move when movement is called for, and you rest when rest is wise. You may also notice a shift in how you perceive obstacles. They no longer feel like interruptions to your path, but invitations to deepen it. Each challenge carries information. Each pause holds potential. When you stop labeling experiences as good or bad, you free yourself to receive their hidden gifts. Life is not happening to you, it is happening through you, shaping consciousness in ways the intellect alone cannot grasp. The more you align with this understanding, the more effortless alignment becomes. You are not striving to be spiritual. You are simply allowing your natural state to reemerge. Peace is not something you achieve. It is something you uncover when resistance falls away. Joy arises not from accumulation, but from presence. Fulfillment flows not from constant motion, but from meaningful stillness. And in this stillness, you sense a deeper companionship. You realize that you have never been truly alone. Guidance has always been present, not as an external authority, but as an inner knowing that grows clearer as you trust it. When you honor this knowing, life responds with coherence. Synchronicities increase. Encounters feel purposeful. Even ordinary moments carry a quiet glow of significance. When the way forward is not yet visible, remain rooted in what is real now. Your breath, your awareness, your capacity to choose love over fear in this moment. This choice repeated gently and consistently, reshapes your experience from the inside out. The path does not need to be fully revealed for you to walk it. Each step becomes visible only when you are ready to take it. And so you continue, not with blind optimism, but with grounded trust. Not with rigid plans, but with open presence. You allow life to unfold without demanding that it conform to old expectations. In doing so, you discover that what once seemed blocked was simply waiting for you to align with a deeper truth. The way does not appear because you force it. It appears because you are ready to see it. There is a moment that arrives quietly, almost unnoticed, when you realize you are no longer asking life to prove itself to you. You are no longer standing in front of each moment with crossed arms, demanding guarantees. Instead, you meet what is arising with a softened gaze, a willingness to be taught rather than convinced. This shift is subtle, yet it changes the entire architecture of your inner world. You are no longer negotiating with existence. You are listening to it. In this listening, something deep begins to exhale. The tension you carried as vigilance slowly dissolves. You notice how much energy was spent bracing for disappointment, rehearsing worst-case scenarios, protecting yourself from imagined futures. As that habit loosens, vitality returns. Not the restless energy of striving, but a steady aliveness that feels grounded and sane. You realize that peace was never absent. It was simply buried beneath layers of mental noise. Life begins to feel less like a test and more like a teacher. Experiences are no longer framed as verdicts on your worth, but as messages shaped perfectly for your growth. Even discomfort carries intelligence now. Even uncertainty feels purposeful. You stop asking whether you are doing it right and start sensing when something is true. Truth has a distinct quality. It does not agitate. It steadies. It feels like coming home to yourself after a long detour. As this steadiness grows, the compulsion to compare fades. You see how comparison was another strategy of the ego, an attempt to locate safety by measuring yourself against others. But comparison cannot reveal truth. It can only distort it. Your path is not meant to resemble anyone else's. It unfolds according to an inner logic that responds to your unique temperament, timing, and calling. When you honor this, envy dissolves into appreciation, and competition softens into connection. There is also a newfound reverence for the ordinary. Moments that once seemed insignificant now feel quietly luminous. A simple breath, a pause between thoughts, the feeling of your feet on the ground. These become anchors, reminders that life is happening here, not in some imagined future where everything is finally resolved. You begin to understand that fulfillment is not postponed until conditions are perfect. It is available whenever awareness is present. In this awareness, fear loses its urgency. It may still arise, but it no longer commands immediate obedience. You learn to sit with it, to feel its texture without becoming its voice. Fear is revealed as a signal, not a directive. It points to old conditioning, not to imminent danger. When you meet fear with curiosity instead of resistance, it relaxes. Having delivered its message, you are free to choose your response. This freedom extends into your relationships as well. You listen more deeply, not to fix or persuade, but to understand. You speak more honestly, not to defend an image, but to express what is real. Boundaries become clearer, not harsher. Love becomes less transactional, less dependent on being needed or approved of. You give because it feels natural, not because you are seeking security in return. There is a growing trust in timing now. You no longer rush beginnings or mourn endings with the same intensity. You sense that everything arrives when the inner conditions are ready to support it. What once felt late now feels precise. What once felt premature now feels protected. You recognize that impatience was never about time, it was about fear of missing out on your own life. As that fear dissolves, patience becomes effortless. Your sense of identity continues to simplify. You are less defined by what you do and more by how you are. Presence replaces performance. Authenticity replaces effort. You feel less fragmented, less pulled in competing directions. Decisions arise from coherence rather than conflict. You act not because you are pressured, but because something within you feels aligned and clear. And when moments of doubt return, as they sometimes will, you meet them with kindness rather than alarm. You no longer interpret doubt as failure. You see it as a natural recalibration, an invitation to return to stillness and remember what you already know. This remembering does not come as words. It comes as a felt sense of rightness, a quiet confidence that does not need reinforcement. Gradually, you realize that the way was never missing. It was simply obscured by the noise of trying too hard to control what could only be received. The path reveals itself not when you demand certainty, but when you cultivate presence. Each moment becomes both the destination and the guide. You move forward without needing to see the entire journey, trusting that each step carries its own illumination. And so you continue, not as someone searching for meaning, but as someone allowing meaning to arise naturally from awareness itself. Life no longer feels like something you must conquer or decipher. It feels like something you are participating in, moment by moment, with humility and trust. When there once seemed no way, there is now a quiet knowing that the way has always been unfolding, patiently, intelligently, waiting for you to meet it from within. And as this understanding settles gently into your being, there is no dramatic conclusion, no sudden trumpet announcing arrival. There is simply a deep, quiet sense of alignment, like a river finally flowing without obstruction. You feel less compelled to announce who you are or where you are going. The need to convince dissolves. What remains is a calm intimacy with life itself, an unspoken agreement that you are being carried even when you are not steering. You sense now that the intelligence guiding you has never been separate from you. It was never outside, never withheld, never testing your worthiness. It has always been expressing itself as you through your breath, your awareness, your capacity to choose presence over panic. What once felt like abandonment is revealed as redirection. What once felt like silence is understood as guidance, too subtle for a noisy mind. There is a tenderness that arises when you stop resisting the unknown. You no longer treat uncertainty as a void, but as a living field of possibility. In that field, imagination softens into intuition, and effort gives way to grace. You begin to notice how life responds when you stop insisting and start allowing. Events arrange themselves with a quiet elegance. You are met, supported, and gently nudged in directions that feel both surprising and inevitable. The heart, no longer armored, becomes a place of refuge rather than strain. You realize how strong softness truly is. It does not collapse under pressure, it adapts, it bends without breaking. This softness allows you to feel fully without being consumed, to care deeply without losing yourself. It is the strength of someone who trusts life enough to remain open. You are no longer haunted by the need to resolve everything. Some questions are released entirely, others remain, but they no longer ache. They rest within you like seeds, waiting for the right season. You understand now that wisdom unfolds organically. It cannot be rushed or extracted. It reveals itself when lived, not when hunted. There is gratitude here, not the loud kind that declares itself, but the quiet kind that permeates perception. You notice it in simple moments, the rhythm of your breath, the steadiness of your presence, the way awareness holds experience without judgment. Gratitude arises not because life is perfect, but because it is real, responsive, and participating with you. And when challenges arise again, as they will, you meet them differently. You do not collapse into old narratives of struggle. You pause, you listen. You remember that alignment always precedes resolution. You trust that clarity follows surrender, not force. Each time you return to this knowing, it deepens, becoming less something you practice and more something you are. You understand now that the way does not reveal itself all at once because it is not meant to be possessed. It is meant to be lived. Each step appears as you become ready for it, shaped by your willingness to remain present and faithful to what feels true. The journey is not linear, it is intimate. It unfolds within awareness, moment by moment, breath by breath. And so there is nothing left to chase, nothing left to prove, only this quiet companionship with life, this felt sense of being guided from within. When there once seemed no way, you now recognize that the way was never absent. It was waiting patiently for your fear to soften, for your striving to rest, for your trust to awaken. You do not need to know what comes next to be at peace now. You do not need certainty to be supported. You are already held in a larger order that responds to alignment, faith, and stillness. And as you continue forward, not ahead of life, not behind it, but with it, you carry this knowing gently within you, like a steady light that does not flicker. The way reveals itself not because you demand it, but because you are finally listening. There is a quiet misunderstanding that lives in the human mind and it is the belief that what is not happening right now is somehow being withheld, delayed, denied, or forgotten. The mind measures life in minutes and months, in calendars and clocks, in effort and visible progress. The soul measures life in alignment. And God, whatever name you give to that infinite intelligence that breathes through you, does not move according to urgency, impatience, or fear. God moves according to harmony. And harmony, when it arrives all at once. You see, the universe does not crawl. It does not inch forward. It does not hesitate. What appears slow is not life itself, but the resistance we place in front of it. Like a river blocked by stones of doubt and worry, the flow does not disappear, it waits. And the moment the stones are lifted, the water rushes through with a force that feels sudden, miraculous, even shocking to the human mind. But to life itself, it was never delayed. It was simply waiting for permission. There is a profound peace that comes when you realize that God is not testing you with time, not teasing you with delay, not punishing you with silence. What you call waiting is often preparation. What you call stagnation is often recalibration. What you call being stuck is frequently the soul whispering, slow down, soften, stop forcing, stop gripping, stop demanding that life bend to your fear-based schedule. Because the moment you release the need to control how and when, the universe demonstrates just how swiftly it can rearrange everything. Think of how quickly fear can arise. One thought, one memory, one imagined future, and the body tightens instantly. If fear can move that fast, why do you believe love moves slowly? If anxiety can flood your nervous system in seconds, why do you doubt that grace can do the same? The only difference is that fear is allowed instantly, while trust is negotiated, questioned, delayed. And yet trust, once chosen, has a velocity that the mind cannot comprehend. God does not require years to heal a heart, decades to open a door, lifetimes to realign your path. The mind tells you that change must be incremental, earned through struggle, paid for with exhaustion. But the soul knows another truth. Alignment is instantaneous. The moment you see clearly, the moment you soften, the moment you stop arguing with what is, everything begins to shift, sometimes quietly, sometimes invisibly, and sometimes so fast it leaves you breathless. What slows divine movement is not circumstance. It is attachment. Attachment to outcomes. Attachment to how it should look. Attachment to who you think you need to be before life can bless you. Attachment to proving, fixing, forcing, managing. The ego thrives on control because control gives the illusion of safety. But control is not safety. Control is fear dressed up as responsibility. And fear constricts the flow of life like a clenched fist trying to hold water. When you relax the grip, the water pours through effortlessly. There is a moment in every life when striving becomes heavier than surrender. When effort feels more exhausting than trust. When pushing no longer feels productive but painful. That moment is not failure. That moment is the invitation. The invitation to stop trying to outrun divine timing and instead step into divine alignment. Because divine timing is not about waiting longer. It is about waiting differently. It is about allowing instead of forcing. Listening instead of demanding. Trusting instead of chasing. The soul does not panic about the future. It knows. It always knows. It knows that life is intelligent, responsive, and precise beyond anything the thinking mind can orchestrate. It knows that what is meant for you is not lost, delayed, or denied. It is held in perfect readiness, waiting for you to meet it, not with desperation, but with openness, not with tension, but with calm expectancy. You are not late. You are not behind. You are not broken. You are not being punished. You are being guided. And guidance does not shout. It whispers. It nudges. It gently closes doors that would have required you to abandon yourself. It delays paths that would have cost you your peace. It reroutes you away from outcomes that looked right to the ego but wrong to the soul. And here's the great paradox. The more you trust, the faster things move. The less you cling, the quicker clarity arrives. The moment you stop asking, why isn't this happening yet? And start asking, what is life teaching me to release right now? Everything accelerates. Because release is the key that unlocks momentum. God moves fastest when you stop interfering. This does not mean you become passive. It means you become present. It means you act from alignment rather than anxiety. It means your thoughts slow down, your breath deepens, your nervous system softens, and in that softened state, inspiration can finally reach you. Not forced action, inspired action. The kind of action that feels obvious in hindsight. The kind of action that requires less effort because it is carried by the current rather than pushed against it. Notice how often your mind tries to calculate outcomes, how it rehearses conversations that have not happened, how it prepares for disappointments that may never come, how it clings to timelines that were never promised. This mental noise is not preparation. It is resistance. And resistance is not strength. It is mistrust. It is the quiet belief that life does not know what it is doing unless you supervise it. But life has been arranging galaxies, seasons, heartbeats, and breath long before you learn to worry. The same intelligence that moves the stars is breathing you. And that intelligence does not need reminders, ultimatums, or panic-driven planning. It responds to clarity. It responds to coherence. It responds to the state of being you are embodying far more than the words you are speaking. When your inner world becomes calm, aligned, and receptive, the outer world reorganizes with astonishing speed. Doors open that logic cannot explain. Conversations happen at the exact moment you are ready to hear them. Opportunities appear without struggle. Solutions arrive without force. Not because you earned them through exhaustion, but because you stopped blocking them with fear. You were never meant to muscle your way into destiny. Destiny unfolds when you stop wrestling with the present moment, when you accept where you are, without resignation, without bitterness, without self-blame. Acceptance is not giving up. Acceptance is aligning with reality so fully that reality can finally move you forward. There are no justified resentments in the eyes of the soul. Resentment is simply the refusal to let life teach you. Forgiveness, then, is not about excusing the past. It is about freeing the future. Every grievance you release is a weight removed from the flow of divine timing. Every old story you let go of clears space for something new to arrive faster than you thought possible. And this is the great secret the ego cannot understand. God does not respond to pleading. God responds to alignment. Not to urgency, but to trust. Not to control, but to coherence. When your thoughts, emotions, and intentions settle into harmony, life does not hesitate. It moves with speed, precision, and grace that feels miraculous only because you have forgotten how natural it is. The universe is not slow. You have simply been gripping too tightly. Let yourself loosen. Let yourself rest in the knowing that what is meant for you is already on its way, not trudging, not delayed, but poised, waiting for you to stop bracing against life and start dancing with it. The moment resistance ends, momentum begins. The moment trust begins, timing collapses. What felt impossible becomes inevitable. What felt far away arrives suddenly. What felt blocked dissolves without effort. You do not understand how fast God can move, not because it is mysterious, but because the mind has been trained to expect struggle. The soul, however, has always known. When you align, life accelerates. When you trust, the path clears. When you stop forcing outcomes and start allowing, everything rearranges itself with breathtaking speed. And in that moment, you realize the truth that was always there. Nothing was ever wrong. Nothing was ever late. You were simply being prepared to receive what arrives, not through force, but through grace. And so the breath deepens, not as an effort, but as a remembrance. A remembering that you were never meant to live in a state of bracing, always leaning forward into some imagined future, always scanning for signs that life is finally about to cooperate. Cooperation was never missing. Presence was. And presence is not something you achieve, it is something you stop abandoning. The moment you stop leaving yourself, life stops delaying its gifts. There is a subtle exhaustion that comes from trying to predict what cannot be controlled. It is the fatigue of a mind that believes safety comes from anticipation rather than trust. Yet safety has never lived in prediction. It lives in alignment. It lives in the quiet confidence that you are being carried by something far wiser than your strategies, far more patient than your fears, far more precise than your plans. When you rest into that knowing, the body softens, the heart opens, and the signal you send to life changes entirely. Life is always listening, not to your words, but to your state of being. It listens to the tone beneath your thoughts, the frequency beneath your actions, the intention beneath your desires. When those are tangled in fear, life responds cautiously, gently, waiting for you to feel safe enough to receive. When those are clear, calm, and coherent, life responds swiftly because there is nothing left to protect you from. You were never meant to chase clarity. Clarity emerges when the noise subsides. And noise is not just sound, it is mental, arguing with what is, emotional resistance to what has been, and spiritual impatience with what is unfolding. As the arguing ends, clarity rises like mist lifting from a lake. Suddenly, what felt confusing feels obvious. What felt heavy feels manageable. What felt distant feels near. Not because something external changed, but because you finally stopped obstructing your own perception. There is a tenderness to divine timing that the ego often misinterprets as indifference. But tenderness is not absence, it is care. It is the way life waits until your nervous system is ready to hold what is coming without collapsing into fear or sabotaging it with doubt. Some doors do not open early because you would have walked through them carrying wounds that would have distorted everything inside. Some blessings wait not because you are unworthy, but because you are still learning how to receive without flinching. Receiving is an art the soul understands, but the ego resists. The ego believes it must prove, earn, justify. The soul knows that worthiness is not conditional. And when you begin to live from that knowing, not as a concept, but as a felt truth, life responds immediately. Opportunities appear where there were none. Support arrives from unexpected directions. Answers surface without being hunted. The speed is not frantic. It is elegant. It is precise. It is unmistakable. Notice how often the mind equates stillness with stagnation. Yet stillness is the womb of creation. It is where alignment is born. It is where scattered energy gathers itself into coherence. When you stop rushing, you stop scattering. When you stop scattering, you become powerful. Not loud power, quiet power. The kind of power that does not announce itself, but moves mountains without spectacle. You do not need to convince life of your readiness. Readiness is not a performance, it is a state, and states shift faster than circumstances. The instant your inner posture changes from gripping to allowing, from bracing to trusting, circumstances reorganize in response. The outer world is always downstream from the inner one. This is not metaphor. It is law, a law as reliable as gravity, as impartial as breath. And here is where grace enters, not as a reward, but as a natural consequence. Grace is what flows when resistance dissolves. Grace is not dramatic, it is efficient. It wastes nothing. It bypasses unnecessary struggle. It finds the shortest path between intention and manifestation. When you align with it, life does not move slowly to test you. It moves quickly to meet you. There is a quiet joy in realizing that you no longer need to rush yourself. That urgency was never guidance, it was fear. Guidance feels different. It feels calm, steady, grounded. It does not shout. It does not threaten. It does not say, hurry or else. It says this way, when you are ready. And readiness, again, is not about time. It is about trust. As trust deepens, the future loosens its grip on your attention. You stop living ahead of yourself. You return to the only place where power has ever lived, this moment. And in this moment, you are not lacking, you are not unfinished, you are not behind, you are whole. From wholeness, creation is immediate. From lack, creation is delayed. Life mirrors the assumption you hold about yourself. This is why healing begins within, not as a task, but as a release. Healing is the decision to stop carrying stories that no longer serve your becoming. It is the willingness to let the past remain where it belongs, complete, instructive, but no longer authoritative. Each story you loosen shortens the distance between where you are and what is ready to arrive. And slowly, gently, without fanfare, you begin to notice something remarkable. The sense of waiting fades, not because everything has happened, but because you are no longer arguing with the unfolding. The anxiety that once accompanied uncertainty gives way to a quiet curiosity. You become interested rather than afraid, open rather than guarded, and in that openness, life moves freely. What once felt like effort begins to feel like cooperation. What once felt like struggle begins to feel like guidance. What once felt impossible begins to feel inevitable. Not because you forced it into being, but because you finally aligned with the current that was always carrying you. This is the speed of God, not rushed, not frantic, but instantaneous when invited. It is the speed of alignment, the velocity of trust, the elegance of surrender. And it has always been available to you, waiting patiently for the moment you stop trying to control the river and allow yourself to be carried home. And as you are carried, something within you begins to recognize itself again. Not the version shaped by expectation or comparison, but the quiet essence that existed before you learned to measure your life against outcomes. This recognition does not arrive as a revelation that shakes the ground. It arrives as a soft certainty, a steady inner yes that requires no explanation. You feel it in the way your breath settles, in the way your shoulders release, in the way your mind stops rehearsing disasters that never come. There is a deep intelligence in ease. The world has taught you to distrust it, to believe that if something feels natural, it must be fragile or undeserved. But the soul knows better. Ease is not weakness. Ease is alignment. When something is aligned, it does not resist itself. It moves with grace because grace is simply life unopposed. And when your inner world becomes less opposed to what is, the outer world has nothing to push against. You begin to see that many of the delays you feared were not blocks but buffers. They slowed you just enough to prevent you from stepping into versions of your future that would have required you to shrink, harden, or abandon your truth. What looked like a closed door was often a protection. What felt like rejection was frequently redirection. And when you stop interpreting life through the lens of threat, you start to see the exquisite care woven into every pause. There is a moment when striving quietly exhausts itself, not dramatically, not with collapse, but with clarity. You realize that pushing harder has not brought peace, only tension. That forcing outcomes has not created security, only fatigue. And in that realization, something ancient inside you exhales. You stop trying to outrun uncertainty and allow it to become spacious. And space is where possibility breathes. Possibility does not shout. It waits. It waits for you to stop gripping the known long enough to let the unknown speak. The unknown is not empty. It is fertile. It is the field from which every transformation arises. But the mind, trained to equate certainty with safety, resists it. The soul, however, recognizes the unknown as home. It knows that creation requires openness, not guarantees. As you soften into this understanding, your relationship with time begins to change. Time no longer feels like an adversary withholding what you want. It becomes a rhythm, a dance between readiness and arrival. You stop asking how long and start noticing how aligned. And alignment, once achieved, does not require waiting. It triggers movement. Immediate, precise, unforced movement. There is a sacred efficiency to the way life responds when you are no longer divided within yourself. When your thoughts stop arguing with your feelings, when your desires stop fighting your fears, when your intentions stop contradicting your self-image, everything accelerates. Division slows creation. Coherence hastens it. This is why inner work is not optional, it is catalytic. You are not meant to carry the weight of constant self-correction. The belief that you must continuously fix yourself to deserve a better life is one of the most exhausting illusions the ego perpetuates. Growth does not come from relentless self-judgment. It comes from self-acceptance so complete that change becomes natural rather than forced. When you stop treating yourself as a problem, life stops responding as if something is wrong. And so compassion enters not as sentimentality but as wisdom. Compassion for your past, for your missteps, for the ways you tried to survive before you knew how to trust. This compassion is not backward-looking, it is liberating. It dissolves the inner friction that kept you tethered to old timelines. And when those timelines dissolve, the future is free to reorganize itself with astonishing speed. You begin to notice how quickly inspiration replaces anxiety, how solutions arise without struggle, how conversations unfold with ease, how decisions feel lighter, clearer, less burdened by second-guessing. This is not luck. This is alignment expressing itself. Life is not suddenly being generous. It is responding to a state of openness that finally allows generosity to land. There is no rush in this flow, yet nothing is delayed. The paradox resolves itself when you realize that urgency was never the engine of creation, presence was. And presence is not something you do, it is something you stop interrupting. The more fully you inhabit the moment, the less fragmented your energy becomes. and focused energy moves fast. You start to trust not just outcomes, but the process itself. You trust the pauses. You trust the quiet seasons. You trust the spaces between decisions. You trust that nothing essential is being withheld. This trust is not blind. It is informed by experience, by the realization that every time you let go just a little more, life met you with something better than what you were trying to force. And so the journey continues, not as a race toward a finish line, but as a deepening relationship with the intelligence that animates you. You are no longer waiting for life to begin. You are living it fully, softly, aligned. And in that alignment, you feel the unmistakable truth. When you are ready, life does not hesitate. It moves swiftly, precisely, and with a grace that feels like remembering who you have always been. And eventually, without effort, without announcement, you arrive at a knowing that does not need reassurance, a knowing that settles into you like dusk, gentle and inevitable. You realize that nothing in your life was ever meant to be rushed into existence. It was meant to be welcomed. And welcoming requires open hands, not clenched ones. You feel the shift, not as excitement, but as peace. A deep peace that tells you there is nothing you need to chase to be complete, nothing you need to prove to be chosen, nothing you need to fix to be loved by life itself. The striving falls away because it no longer makes sense. Why strain against a current that is already carrying you? In this stillness, you sense how profoundly supported you have always been, even in moments that felt lonely, even in seasons that felt barren, even when the path disappeared and all you could do was breathe and hope. Support was there, not removing the lesson, not bypassing the growth, but holding you steady while you learned how to trust yourself again. You begin to see that trust was never about believing something good would happen someday. Trust was about resting in the truth that whatever unfolds is part of your awakening, that nothing is random, that nothing is wasted, that every experience, when met with presence, refines rather than diminishes you. And with that realization, something remarkable occurs. You stop waiting for permission to be at peace. You stop postponing joy until conditions improve. You stop telling yourself that life will begin once everything makes sense. Life is happening now. Grace is happening now. Alignment is happening now. And from this moment forward, everything responds differently because you are responding differently. There is no grand finale to this understanding, no dramatic conclusion, only a quiet return to yourself. To the part of you that always knew that life is intelligent, responsive, and kind when met without fear. To the part of you that remembers that surrender is not collapse, it is cooperation with something infinitely wiser than control. You move forward not with certainty, but with confidence. Not with guarantees, but with trust. And trust, you discover, is faster than fear ever was. It clears paths. It opens doors. It dissolves obstacles before they harden. When you trust, you do not wait long for evidence. Evidence arrives because trust removes the need for delay. This is how fast God can move. Not because something outside of you suddenly decides to act, but because something within you finally gets out of the way. The moment you align, the moment you soften, the moment you allow life to be as intelligent as it is, everything shifts. And you walk on, not hurried, not hesitant, but grounded in the quiet certainty that you are exactly where you need to be, that what is meant for you knows how to find you, that timing is not working against you, but with you, always. You are not late, you are not forgotten, you are not stalled, you are becoming. And in that becoming, you realize the most liberating truth of all. Life has been waiting not for your effort, but for your trust.